My man, Nick Tucker. How are you, my friend?
How I'm great. How are you?
Very good. Very good. I was so
Good.
glad to have you on to the broadcast today. We've chatted over the years just about, comparing notes, and both have pretty large schools. And so I thought it would be cool to have you on. And because you've got a pretty cool system, which we're going to talk about, like your marketing system is really, really cool that you've developed, and you're helping out a lot of schools. But before we jump into that, just tell me a little bit about yourself. Like, where are you from, and about your school, how you got started, and all that.
Yeah. So I live in the lovely state of Minnesota, which this winter has been pretty great. But normally, look outside, we'd be covered in a few feet of snow and whatnot. And so yeah, I'm a Chicago transplant. And yeah, so as far as my school goes and my story around that, it's sort of a weird story, but maybe also one that other people can resonate with. I was teaching at another music school for a handful of years up here in the Twin Cities, in Minneapolis. And gosh, it would have been, so it was like a few days before I was getting married. And in fact, it was 5 days before I got married. And 20 days after we had closed on our house, I walked into the school that I was teaching at, and they said, "Listen, buddy, we don't want you here anymore. You got to go."
Mm.
And so I got let go. That would have been in 2014. And immediately went into panic mode. I'm about to get married. I just bought a house. I got all the things on my plate, and so I was like, you know what, this will be the best thing that's ever happened to me. I remember I went home. I stopped at the liquor store on the way home, bought a bottle of wine, and I walked through the door and I told my sweet wife, soon to be wife, I was like, "Hey, I got the best news today. I got fired. It's going to be the best thing that's ever happened to us." And she's just like sobbing about it. In my head, I was like, when that moment happened, I was like, man, if this didn't happen, I would have never been given the push to actually go out and do the thing that I wanted to do, because it was like safety and security
You
is
felt
what I
that in
wanted.
the moment, like you felt
Oh, it was like
grateful in the moment that you had just been
uh,
fired.
I felt all the things. So there was the part of me that was like, holy hell, how am I about to do all of this? And then also the version of me going like, man, this is gonna be a good thing. This is gonna, like, the eternal optimist in me is like, man, this is gonna be a good thing, best thing that'll ever happen to us. So in 2014, we went on our honeymoon, came back, and I was like, all right, I gotta learn how to, teach some drum lessons in our basement. And so I started teaching drum lessons in our basement. And then eventually I had a friend of mine who was like, "Why aren't you teaching piano? I've heard you play piano. You could do that too." And so I started doing that. And then it was actually in 2016 was our now oldest daughter was born. And I remember my wife coming to me and she goes, "Listen, I love you lots, but there's going to be no drums in this house with a sleeping infant." And I was like, "Oh shoot." So now insert the new problem, right? So it was like in my head, I was like, "Oh, I'm just going to teach drum lessons out of my home." And I had like 25 or 30 kids at that time. And so yeah, we moved it into this like super small commercial location. I think it was like 650 square feet, and it was just one room. It was like a room, that had doors that we could close, and then like a small lobby space, right, for the parents and stuff. And when we were in there, I was like, man, it's pretty lonely in here. It'd be sweet to have somebody else in this place with me. And so I got called up a buddy who's a framer, and was like, "Hey, will you come and build two walls in this place for me? I just want to have a buddy come and teach guitar lessons." And so it was all started out as like this very casual thing of me not knowing anything about business, not knowing anything. Like, I'm a musician, like that's all I knew. And
Mm.
yeah, and we invited this buddy in, and then after about like 9 months or so, we were like, wait a second, we might be onto something here. Like, there's at this point there were like 60 kids, between me and this other instructor. And so that's the moment. It's like I we could say my school started in 2014 from my basement. We could say it started in 2016, which is like first commercial location. But it was like in 2017 was the moment that I was like, okay, this is now what I need to be doing.
Hmm. That's when you decided that it was like, we got to treat this like a business and we got to get serious about like serious growth. And you kind of take that teacher hat off, right? And step into the role of like business owner and marketer and all that.
Totally. Yeah. And right. I mean, I like zero business training, right? I'm not, again, it was my life before was I was touring and I was playing out, all like the just your dirty hipster gay musician sort of thing. And then it all of a sudden turned into, wait a second, I gotta shape up here and learn some skills and some tools if I actually want to take this thing seriously.
So in 2014 though, like that's when it all started in the basement, and then that went for about 2 years.
Yep. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And you were
And it
and you were
also
teaching how many students by 2016?
Yeah, so when we hit 2016, I think it was like 25 or 30 kids that I
Okay.
that I was teaching at that point. And again, it was like it was so casual. I was at
Right.
that time I was valeting at a hotel as well. It was just like just doing anything I could to make sure that I could support
Right.
my family. Um, and it was, yeah, in 2016 when we moved into that commercial location, after about 6 months of being in there, was when I bailed on the valeting gig and was like, okay, this has got to be a focus of mine.
Okay. Yeah. And so then from 2016 to 2017, it sounds like you had some growth. Like you like
That
student count wise, right?
Yeah, that's where we went from, like, between me and this other guy, was like, I think we had 60 students at that time. If I probably have the spreadsheet still pulled up from that year of, as we're tracking month to
Yeah.
month growth and whatnot. But yeah, I think we ended the year 2016 with around 60 students, because in 2017 was when we moved into, so we were like, we sort of maxed out this small building, right? I mean, you can't do much with 650 square feet. Some people do amazing things with 650 square feet. Was I thought that we needed something bigger. So yeah, it was in 2017 where we took out a 401k loan on my wife's 401k. We pulled out every dollar out of my retirement, and we were like, let's go all in. Let's find a bigger building. So we went from 2 rooms into 8 rooms in 2017, which is and we stayed in that building for 5 years before we actually moved on into a new space. But again, it was like, when I say like 2017 was as you say, you like take off your music teacher hat and put on your, like, all right, I'm a business owner hat. It was
Yeah.
like when you pull out every dollar out of your retirement and you throw in a lot of risk. It's like you got to be ready to jump and do some big things.
Yeah, there's more at stake, right?
Oh,
Like the stakes are so high, and then of course you've got a family now that you got to provide for that's relying on you. So it's like it's no, I hear you, man. That's when it gets real. That's when it gets real. But I'm curious though. I'm curious what you did. So 2016 to 2017. I want to come back to that because that's where like I mean you like tripled in size in student enrollment, and you got a teacher. What did you do to get so many new students in that year? Was it just proximity, like changing locations, or
So I'd spent quite a bit of time at that point. I was working on, SEO was like a really big thing at that point.
yeah?
We weren't putting any money into Google Ads or anything like that. I did have a buddy walk me through a little bit of some Facebook ad stuff, and he tried to, he did
Okay.
some Facebook ads for us. So we like, at that point, and we still run this offer today. I mean, it was so brilliant.
Hmm.
He's like, everybody else is doing this free lesson thing. So like, what if you make a little bit of money on it, but you give people 2 lessons? And so he was like, let's try this thing called 2 for 22. So they get 2 lessons for $22. And so he ran Facebook ads for us for, I don't know, a month or so.
Mm-hmm.
and it was great, and it was so helpful to have him do that. But one of the things that we did terribly at that time was like we had these leads come in, and you'd like call them once, maybe you'd call them twice, right? And then you'd be like, well, okay, I guess they're not interested, which is not the game, right?
Right.
It's like
Right.
the at this point I say like anywhere from 12 to 15 points of contact is what we need to have. And points of contact can be an email, it could be a phone, it could be um, so email, phone, text message, really any of that sort of stuff will is considered a point of contact. It's not picking up the phone and calling somebody 15 times. Um, and
Right.
then the other thing that I would say is I at that point I actually also hired I worked with a business mentor as well who specialized in music schools, who he's not running his program anymore, but I would fly out to go see him twice a year, and so I'm now in a room with people who are doing like way bigger things than I am. And I'm learning
Right.
from a guy who had, I think at that point he had like three locations and like thousands of students, right? And so, it's like I realized that I couldn't do it by myself and I needed somebody to like step in and go, okay, buddy, you got no business training. I'll give you some of that. I'll give you some tools, some tips, teach you about systemizing your business, teaching you about retention, marketing, all that sort of stuff. So, that was a big aspect of our growth, I believe, as well.
That's huge. Yeah. Absolutely. Getting that because I think a lot of people don't invest enough in themselves with their business because with business, it's like, I mean, we just said it. When you're starting to put real dollars on the line, it's like you're thinking of like cutting expenses. Like, how can I spend less to keep
Yes.
my profitability up? Oftentimes, you're the last person that you think of investing in, but it's really the most important investment of all because empowering yourself with that knowledge and that ability to really grow is the only way you're going to take it to the next level. So that's cool. That's really cool that you did that. So 2016, 17. So that's how you started to really start. That's where the needle really started to move. And then 2017, you found the location. You went from 2 to 8 rooms,
Yep.
and walk us through that.
Yeah. So in 2017, so we at that point, I think when we no. It would have been like early 2018. So we moved in like May of 2017 into this location, this bigger location, and we had about oh gosh, it's probably 100 students or so, I think at this point. So now we're like starting. It's not growing as quickly, right? We're starting
Hmm.
to see stuff slow down a little bit. And in 2018, early 2018, um, I started getting to the point where I was like, "Oh crap! If we don't, have some big growth happen soon, like we're in trouble." And so I had built at this point what we now lovingly refer to as the Frankenstein system. This system of like how when a lead comes in, and we had a like Trello board, and if you're familiar with Zapier, it was like when you move this card over to this thing, the Zap is going to send this thing to this person, and then when you move it over to this side, it's like all these things. But then what would happen is anytime I would change like anything on the like if it was an email or if it was like something on the board, the whole entire system would break. And so it essentially we got to the point where we're like, we have to do this once and never touch it again. The bummer is, it's like, well, there's lots of stuff that would make this better if we could, tweak it and change it. And so we used that pretty early on through like 2018, and then it was in August of 2018. I remember sitting at my desk at our house, and I remember looking at my wife and going, I think I'm going to take every dollar that we've budgeted for the rest of the year and spend it in August on Facebook ads and just see what happens. Meanwhile, my wife is now pregnant with our second daughter, who was supposed to be born in September. And so we put together this Facebook ad campaign, and at this point we have 130 students. And I'm like, let's go all in. So again, I hired, this time it was another guy to do our Facebook ads. And I was like, all right, man, like this is sort of like a last ditch effort. Like we got to hustle to make this thing happen if we want to like be able to maintain these bills and all this sort of stuff that we knew was coming our way. And from the month of like August through like, gosh, what would it have been, like November? We went from 130 students to 218 solely with marketing from Facebook ads and just throwing money in. But what happened was it was like all of a sudden we like made our money back, right? On what, from like our what we had budgeted on all the other stuff. And we're like, oh, sweet, okay. Now that we got the more money coming in, instead of like putting it in our pockets, let's just keep pouring it back in. And it was like September, more leads coming in, October, more leads coming in and whatnot. And so just like skyrocketed us. And nowadays Facebook ads don't seem to work like that as much as they did back in the good old days. But that was a huge moment for us. And again, if we go back to that idea of the Frankenstein system, so we had an admin at that point, and she was so overwhelmed by all these leads coming in, and it would have been so our youngest daughter was born on September 4th, and I don't say this to brag, because nowadays there's like a lot of shame involved in this, but like, I remember my wife being in the hospital. All these leads are like pouring in, right? She just delivered our youngest child. She's in the hospital and she's like looking at me, seeing me stressed out, and she goes, "Why don't you just leave and go work for like 4 hours and then come back once you get all your leads and stuff taken care of?" And so I left my wife and our old baby in the hospital to go and take care of these leads, because I knew, again, it was like we had poured everything into these leads. We had like budgeted to pour everything into it. I was like, if I didn't do this, it almost becomes a waste of money and a waste of time. And so, yeah, that's our story, from like
Wow.
2018, getting to a point where we're like, we got to hustle and figure this out or we're in big trouble. To the point of going like,
Wow.
yeah, leaving your wife and newborn in the hospital.
Well, I mean, obviously she recognized what was on the line. Like you had put everything out. It's interesting that, you definitely are not averse to risk. Listening to your story, you definitely didn't do things like the conservative way, putting things all on the line with the 401k loan and all that kind of thing, getting things started, to then realizing that, hey, we gotta blow it out the box, in August, and you did. And to your credit, like, you got the results. And
Yep.
um, so how did that translate to 2019, 2020 going forward?
Yeah, so 2019 hits and we're still growing pretty substantially. And so we got to the point where 2019 hit. We said, it was we were hoping to we were in a building and we had first rights of refusal on this building, to occupy any additional space that became available. So it would have been probably June or July of 2019. We're growing quickly, and we decide, hey, there's a space available. We want it, and so we approached our landlord at the time to say, hey, we want this space, and she sort of like dragged us around for a while, until we eventually found out she had undercut our legal contract and had given the space to somebody else. And so we were pretty upset about it. And we ended up getting some other folks involved, and they, ultimately what we decided was we were like, well, we're going to need more space, whether it's here, whether it's somewhere else. So we got to start looking. But we were locked into a 5-year lease, in this building. So it was going to expire in May of 2022. And so we started the process of trying to now purchase commercial real estate. And we said, at this point, we're like, we don't want to be involved in having to deal with the landlord again. Like it's just it's not the game we want to continue to play. So let's start looking to see what it would look like to actually purchase a building. And so in 2019, in fact, it would have been December of 2019, we decided instead of expanding our current location, we were going to stay in there, and we bought a building to open a second location. And again, as our growth is moving up and whatnot, and so we bought this building in December of 2019, and we opened it in February of 2020.
Great
Um,
timing.
by by end of February 2020, I remember us all sitting around and going, "Holy crap, we broke even." Again, at this point, we're using Facebook ads because we're absolutely smashing it with them, right?
Right.
And so we had opened in February of 2020, and by end of February 2020, we had already gotten to the point where that location was breaking even. I mean, it was like boom, almost
Wow.
instantly.
Good for you, man.
And then mid-March hits, and the whole thing just and the problem with it at that point was like that building. So as a parent, like I enroll my kids at music lessons, right? And they do music lessons for, at this point, 2 to 4 weeks or so, we'll say, right? uh when COVID hits and everything goes bananas and everybody switches over to Zoom, what's the first thing that's going to get cut? It's
Right.
like the one thing that your kid just started. You're like, oh, my kid hasn't built a relationship with this teacher. I'm not personally invested in like loving this company. I'm not like a 110% advocate yet. And so we went from like breaking even to just watching that location just and I
Mm.
think it dropped down to like 20 or 30 students virtually almost overnight, while our other location was able to like maintain us for a while. And
Mm.
so, yeah. So as we're in 2019, we're still riding the growth trajectory, and then mid 2020 hits, and then it just like all bottoms out and dies.
Wow. Wow.
And then we have the story that most people have. It's like, at that point we were like, let's not just sit back and go, woe is me, this sucks. Like I hope this whole thing ends soon. We looked at it as an opportunity to actually hit the gas pedal a little bit more while everybody else was backing off. And that just stemmed out of like research and stuff that we had done from companies going like, um, a lot of times what you'll see is when you have those big dips like that, or when something massive a massive event happens like that, the companies who don't actually use it as an opportunity to say woe is me, and actually look at it as an opportunity to go, okay, I'm gonna do the exact opposite of what everybody else is doing, so that by the time we hit the everything gets back normal again, we'll be golden. And
Well, that's
so that's
exactly
the route we
right. I
took.
mean, I remember being in that same boat too, where you have all these companies that I remember a couple different advertisers calling me. My newspaper ad gal called me and she's like, "So do you still want to stay with it?" Like she was assuming that I was going to drop. I hadn't called her, and we had a conversation. I ended up getting my ad rates cut by like down to a third, I think, of what I was paying for the same ad space, full page ad, cut way down because she just was desperate to hold on to me. I did that with like a few, and actually there were some advertisers where I actually bought more ad space because I knew that. Well, I figured that this wasn't going to last forever, right? It was
Right.
everyone thought it would be 2 weeks, right? 2 weeks is all going to be,
Yeah.
flatten the curve,
Uh-huh.
but it was kind of like this whole thing where it's like, well, it can't last and no one else is doing it. Just to your point, right? Like if people can get into that mindset, it's amazing how fast you can progress in a shorter, like it's like you can leapfrog over so many people when you just don't do what everyone else is doing and do the opposite. So
Yeah.
yeah, that's really interesting.
Johnny, friend of mine, Johnny Wilson, he talks about, and I'm going to butcher this story probably, but he talks about how there's this like rowing competition, and all the teams they're rowing and they're rowing, and then all of a sudden they find out there's this big storm that's about to hit, And there's, we'll call it team A and team B, right? Team A is looking at the whole situation, and they're like, you know what? The storm is hitting, but we're not going to go to sleep. We're not going to slow down. We're not going to stop. We're going to keep rowing through the night, and we're going to try and push through this storm. While team B was like, all right, everybody, let's conserve our energy. Let's stay calm. Let's just like, we'll just ride out the storm. And then by, when we hit the morning, the storm will be gone, and then we'll smash through it, and we'll have a lot more energy to actually get through it. So storm hits, we got team A who's just like rowing, rowing, rowing. And then in the morning, they're hopping on the radio, and they're like, okay, where are we at? Like, what's our location? How far do we make it through the night? And the person on the radio is like, well, I'll be honest with you, you're in the exact same spot that you were, you know, last night, when the storm hit. And it was like immediately everybody is absolutely deflated. They're like, oh, we put all this work in and we didn't get anywhere. But then they were like, but the good news is that everybody else who didn't row through the night is a miles and miles and miles behind you now. And so you guys are actually way ahead. So just keep rowing. And it was Team A that ended up winning because they were the ones who were like, man, they stayed in the exact same spot that they were, but they actually pushed through the night, pushed through the storm, so that they were able to win the race while everybody else lost.
Love it. Yeah, I love that story. And like how many different ways can we apply that to our lives? Not even in business, but just in our personal life. And I mean, it's just there is so much truth to pushing through the storm. And I think that when we face that adversity, whatever it is, I talked a lot about this during. I remember during the when this all started happening and everyone started having to shut down and go on to Zoom and all this kind of thing. And it's like, I think when we face what's worst, it's at that point that's what's best can come out of us, right? So it's a powerful, powerful thing. It's just sort of like this theme that runs through life, and because that was rough, man. I mean, we were in the same boat. A third of our school dropped out in 1 month, when everything
Yep.
shut down, and then it's like, now what do we do? We ended up going. I went straight to media. We started offering free lessons to everyone in the city that wanted it, and
Wow.
so we did a huge campaign. Again, just like, what can we do to actually get people's attention? And we ended up signing like 300 students in a month during the closure period. But I mean, it was all free. It was like we didn't make anything off of it, but we got a tremendous amount of visibility. And of course, that eventually led to 2021 was our biggest year we've ever had.
Yep.
Still to date is our biggest year we ever had. Like, the rebound was huge for us because we were out in front, and you guys, same thing.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I mean 2021 and in 2022 were some of our biggest years of our school's existence. I mean, it was insane. And part of it is you're looking though, I mean, at that time there was a place that was, I mean, maybe a half mile away from us, door shut, right? There was a place that was on our same street that was like literally four doors down. She taught piano lessons, and it was like same sort of deal. It's just like, they just saw the dip happen, and they tried to hang on, but they didn't actually like try and power through, and push through. And it was actually, truthfully, before we hit the record button, we were talking about my email marketing and how aggressive I am with it, right? And it was in September of 2020 that I remember going, um, Q4 is coming up here. There's lots of stuff, right? We've got, Halloween, we've got Thanksgiving, we've got Christmas, we've got New Year's, we've got like, these four things. I was like, what if we just go bananas on our email list, which at the time was like, I don't know, 3,500 people or something like that. Like, let's just go bananas on our email list and just start sending out like consistent communication, and not live in this sort of like woe is me state, and go, hey, we're still here and we still offer music lessons. And that was, I think, when we hit 2021, why we had such a big growth is because we also utilized our list in a different way. Instead of going like, people are still wearing masks, people are still uncomfortable going out. It's like, hey, if you're comfortable, you know, come on, come to the party. It's going to be awesome here. And giving out valuable offers and stuff like that.
So that's when you really started to leverage email on like a really high scale was during the pandemic at the
Yeah, so
beginning?
yeah. Yep, so it would have been September of 2020 is when we like really started smashing that out. And that was around that same time that I met with these two guys who were they own a software company and that worked with gyms, and they're called their software is called Hello Gym. And they were a marketing they did marketing for gyms where they're tracking leads, and they've got all of these like epic follow-up sequence and stuff like that. And that all that process was I mean, I literally, they're on our same street. I saw a new tenant had moved in, and I was like, oh, I'll go introduce myself to these guys and figure out who they are. And so at that point, that's when I was like, oh, so you guys have a software company. I've got this dream of like building this thing, and I just don't know how to do it. We lovingly refer to ours as like the Frankenstein system right now, and these are all the things it does. And the one of the guys at the guy who owned the company was like, "Oh, well, we have a solution for that. We could do that." And I was like, "Wait, what?" And he's like, "Yeah." He's like, "All we got to do is," he's like, "we've got like the base level of this thing." He's like, "We just don't. We're not marketing it at this point." He's like, "I wonder if we partner together, if you guys could go and like build all the music school side of things on, over top of this thing, and then we're able to like actually hit the ground running." And he's like, "And then we can sell this to music school owners down the road." And so I was like, "Oh, let's do this. How about you guys, we'll try and build it for my school, and we'll see how awesome it is. And if I love it, then, we can go that route. And if not, then, well, it'll just be a tool for me. And I'm okay with that too." And so it was at that moment that I truthfully believe it's so important for us as business owners to diversify our income, right? Because if one thing
Yeah.
goes sideways, we're immediately able to go jump onto, the other thing, whatever it might be. um, and so, at this point, our school was, I had my school, I had commercial real estate, and I was like, hey, well, maybe this is another opportunity for us. And so, so yeah, so we started working through that from September of 2020 until January of 2021. And it was in January of 21 when we actually went beta with our with this software that was, where we were doing all of our emails through, we were doing all the text messages that I was mentioning before, and our ability to do phone calls and just make sure that we never would lose a lead again.
Wow. Wow. So you went beta in 2021, January of 2021. So it didn't take long for you, well, after you
No,
met with these guys and kind of like brainstorm and just put it into action. So beta meaning you went and put it into place for your own schools.
we went at this point. So it was in December of 2020, I think, is when we actually like officially had it up and running in my
Okay.
school.
Okay.
And so, we were working out all the kinks for about a month and a half or so. And then yeah, at that point we were like, well, what if we, and this is still, we don't generally like take this like massive influx of people in, but we were like, what if we just opened it up to like 5 people,
Right.
and just see sort of like how they like, if they think it's worth their time or energy and whatnot. And so we opened it up to 5 people. We're like, hey, come test this thing out absolutely free for a couple months. Tell us what you think about it. See if you like it. See if like help us work out some of the kinks and stuff. And so, yeah, it was in January of 21 when we went beta with it. And then in March of 21 was like all right, we're collecting payment now. Like, if you want in, then let's do this thing. If you don't find value in it, then we can bail on it. And so it was in March of 21 that we then took in the next round of people.
Wow. Wow. So March of 2021. Okay. And then from there, um, 2021, 2020, like how did that go when you opened it up to people and people started using it? What was the response?
Yeah, so the communication aspect of it has been, I think, what people have loved the most, because generally speaking, not to bash our industry, but a lot of times we're not super tech savvy, right? We're real creative, but we're maybe not understanding all the tech side of things. And so we were able to offer a solution to people who were going like, I I still put my leads on a post-it note on a cork board and like move them across, or I have a spreadsheet that I use, but like I don't do a very good job of keeping track of it and whatnot. So we started getting people who were like, wow, this is like, all I have to do is click a button every day to go, who do I need to call today? Let's start. And so they click the let's start button and boom, it calls all the leads that they need to for the day. And then the next day they like log in. They're like, okay, who do I need to call today? I don't have to think about it. Just click the let's start button and then it calls all their leads and, and automatically send the text messages and emails. So we're like, the feedback we're getting is like, man, it's saving me time. It's keeping my admin staff or myself more focused. And from my marketing standpoint, it's freeing me up to do a lot bigger things.
Wow. Wow. And results wise, were they growing? Were they getting more students with the system or?
Absolutely. I don't have our video that we had put together, within like 6 months or something, but it was amazing to it's like the feel good, the like pat yourself on the back sort of stuff, where
Yeah.
you like
Yeah.
start hearing people going like, oh man, like we were able to generate, X amount more leads, and we were, these tracking features and our ability to like reach out, our communication increased, stuff like that. And what I love about it is that for the longest time, as a music school owner, my thought has always been, and this is still to our school's core, is like, man, how can we create more impact in the lives of kids in our community? And I'm like, what a gift it is to be able to do that for 500 families each and every week. And what I didn't realize as we start doing this is like, with a software solution like this, it's not like I still get to live out that mission and that value, but now the reach is just like way bigger. So instead of it being my 500 kids that I get to impact the lives of, it's like, I've got a school out in California that has 1,200 kids. I've got a school in Texas that has, 400 kids. And it's like all of a sudden, I mean, that's two people I'm working with, but it's like 1,600 students, right?
Right.
And
Yeah.
so it's just like your ability to create more impact now, not just in your own state or in your own community, can even become like, we have a guy now who's working with us in Australia, and so it's become global, that we're able to like create impact across the world, not just in my state, not just in my town, not just in my region, but like across the entire globe.
That's awesome, man. And you're right. That does feel good to know that something you came up with is now impacting thousands and thousands of students around the world. And business owners helping them grow their business as well. So that's super cool. Well, I want to get into this. I want to see how this program actually works. And so you're gonna do a little you can do a little demo for us and show us or give us a little test drive here.
Sure, yeah, I can. I'll pop over to sort of what it looks like here. So, is that
Let me add it
are
here
we?
to the screen. There we go.
Yeah. So this here is just overall what our dashboard looks like. So this tells us how many leads and stuff that we've got, what our different conversion rate is, opportunity values, all that sort of stuff. But my favorite thing about it, and of course, oh no, our team there's a couple maybe that have like trickled in, is our ability to see who needs to be called and where they are at in the pipeline. So if I go back to our dashboard here, and click go to manual actions, so I can see, all right, today these three people still need to be called, and it tells me where they're at in the process, right? So we have this person here who's interested in our musical theater camp. We've got a couple people who we've called who have not picked up, and they're we're gonna follow up with them again today. And all our team has to do is log in. They click the Let's Start button, and then what they'll do is they'll start calling Marie. And so once we talk to Marie, we're like, all right, maybe Marie doesn't pick up, right? And then all of a sudden, Marie's going to jump into what we call the second call not answered. And then, we have texts and emails and all that sort of stuff that comes into all of those, so that it's not just like a phone call and then going, okay, pat myself on the back, I did my job for the day. The system is automatically based on sort of where they're at in their flow. They're going to receive specific communication. So, we have anything from our, waiting for response campaign, which is going to be somebody who says, hey, I'm interested, but I need to talk with my spouse. You'll see here, we've got emails, there's text messages, and then all the way down to, somebody who says, hey, I'm not interested at this time, whatever it might be. What we've done is we've said, okay, sweet, but we're not going to let you go. So then we have an 18-month long campaign that we utilize that just consistently follows up with them. It's providing value to them. We give them helpful tips that are just like, hey, if your kid is, wanting to learn music, here's some, helpful practice tips that your kid can use. It's not even always just like, do you want to sign up? There are for sure some of those that are like, hey, are you still interested? Just respond yes or no. And just checking in with those people to go, is this something you want to, is this something you want to do? But not being super salesy the entire time. And so, yeah, our team logs in and they click the Let's Start button. They do all their phone calls all in one, row, rather than like a lot of times, when we do these phone calls and stuff, it's like, okay, I got to call this person. All right. They don't pick up. Okay. You hang up the phone, you get distracted with something else. And then you're like, oh yeah. I got to go pop over to those phone calls. And then you call the next person. And so what should take you, a short amount of time is if you're like optimizing, call to call to call to call to call, then what this does, so this will give you call to call to call to call, rather than just going like one phone call, get distracted with some email or something, do another phone call, get distracted with something else. So it optimizes your team in a whole new way that allows you to just like zip through stuff. And so at its core, really, that's the solution that we were trying to solve, was not just this idea of like, how do we get more leads or anything like that. We're saying like, with the leads that are coming in, how do we make sure that we're optimizing those and that we're giving them 4 to 5 calls each lead, 4 to 5 calls? How do we make sure that we're texting them if that's their preferred communication? What if they want email? And so each lead who comes in for us is all done. They get 15 points of communication before we even put them into that not booked, not interested web form.
Wow. So these are templated, right? Like, so like if I were to get into this as a studio owner without any knowledge of your follow-ups and that, like, there's a lot that you just showed us there, but like, so
Yeah.
if I didn't have any knowledge, are those templated and with the copy and the text and all that, and you just have to fill in like the actual, like your name and your logo and all that kind of thing?
Yeah, so we handle all of that for you. So it is all the work is done for you. So what we do is we essentially take our templates, we put them on your account, and then this is me not being super tech savvy, but we use, I think it's called short code. So then we have like different spots where we'll like plug in your school's name. So it just automatically uses the information that you provide to us to then put it into the account. So you never actually have to like, go through and write. Like a lot of people feel overwhelmed by the idea of like writing text campaigns and email campaigns and all that sort of stuff. And so our idea was like, well, what if we solve that for you by just giving it to you? Now, there are plenty of, I believe every school has its own unique culture. And so within that, we have the ability to like tweak and change. So, like some school might not want to be like, oh, I can't wait to rock out with you. It may be like, I can't wait to, learn with you, or whatever it may be. So we're able to like make some subtle tweaks and stuff to those campaigns to make sure that they fit your company's culture.
So you really do help onboard these schools. It's not like you're saying, "Here's the software, you guys go fill it in, put in all your own info." You're like there's templates, you're helping them fill it in, you're helping them, you know, put in all fill in all the spaces, so to speak, so that they're ready to go. So they literally I love that let's start button, by the way. That's great. And they could just click let's start and then they can pretty much duplicate what you're doing.
Absolutely. Yeah, and truthfully, when I talk about like that idea of like slowly onboarding people in and whatnot, back in like 2021, we've maintained that same mentality as we've like started growing. And the reason behind it is that I do like my mission is to make sure that somebody had like is like by the time they're using our software, they're like, I'm 110% successful. I know exactly what I need to do, how I need to do it, how to operate this thing. And so we do like, when you mentioned onboarding, we do what we call a tech onboarding, which is like where we go through, we make sure all the technical side of stuff is firing in the way that you want it to be fired, right? And we make sure that all the details are plugged in from your school's name and text messages and all that sort of stuff. And then what we do is we say, okay, now that we have your tech onboarding done, everything's like finalized, everything's looking good. Let's bring your team in who are going to be utilizing this, and let's do a whole entire call where we're going to sit down with your team and we're going to go, all right, team, here's how you're going to use this on a day-to-day basis. And now, after we do what I call our use case onboarding, right, which is that where we like bring in the team and whatnot, we record the call so they have access to it. We then say, okay, now that we've done this, if you don't still feel confident, we're going to keep booking calls with you until you're like, got it. Now I understand how this all works. And now I understand how it makes sense. So for some people, it's like we get through the use case and they're like, boom, I got it. I'm tech savvy enough to understand some of these details. And for some people, they're like, okay, I'm like still living a little bit in the Stone Age and I need lots of help. So will you give me that help? And we're like, absolutely. We're in for being in that with you.
So the customer support aspect, anytime you run software, that's always a big piece, right? Anytime you're selling software to people and it's an ongoing monthly uh, thing, then support is always an issue, right? So like you either have good support or you don't, and and you just address that, right? Like so when people are first getting in, their main thing they want to know is that everything works, and that if they have a question, there's somebody that they can talk to.
Absolutely. And we have like, we have all the, we have loads of guides and all that sort of stuff that are up here. But truthfully, what I do is I tell our clients, I'm like, listen, if you go to that chat support and you have any issue with it or you can't find a video or anything, like here's my booking link to my calendar. Let's find time and let's just zip through it. Which is the joy of it being, like me being in the industry, I think has been the most helpful thing because I understand where most people are at with some of this stuff. So it's like, oh, you
Mhm.
wanna do this like unique little tweak here? Yeah, here's a way that we could do that. So yeah, for me, it's so important to be able to make sure that people are like successful in running this thing.
Yeah, that's fantastic. One of the things I love about what you're talking about, Nick, is the just this idea that most people struggle with follow up. Like that's the biggest issue. I feel like not just in our industry, but in business in general. It's why they say the fortune is in the follow up because I mean, most people can get a new prospect in the door. Like most people can have somebody raise their hand and say, "Hey, I'm interested in what you're doing. Tell me a little bit more." But it like a great deal, not like a very large number of people stop there. I mean, you said it earlier, like make a couple phone calls. They're probably not interested. Let's just move on. And now there's this person that's expressed interest and will probably sign up at some point if they were just, if you just stay in contact with them. It could be 6 months, it could be a year and a half. But the idea that this system actually creates automation through follow up, I think that to me is the biggest value here. I mean, I think there's a ton of value here, by the way. I think that your system is pretty cool in that you're allowing, because another benefit that I see here is that, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, but it seems like this is helping with maybe larger schools that have to staff a lot of people, just to do all the follow-ups and all the calls and all, just to maintain just all of that.
Yep.
This is almost like hiring another person to just burn through all of that busy work and get straight to the issue of like, let's get them on the phone. We can just get them on the phone, automatically and pumping through calls. Have you found that to be the case where this actually saves money on staffing?
Mm. Well, yeah. So we even have some schools. There's one out in California that I know. He has one person who their entire job, they're a very large school, their entire job is literally to just like do this thing. And what, from my understanding, what he was able to do was like essentially reallocate her position to go, hey, I only want you to focus on this thing, right? Which is now going to reduce all the other hours that you were utilizing to this thing. And then we're able to hire a part-time, ish person to actually then elevate this other thing that you were doing. So it is allowing people to be able to like reduce labor costs, or on the flip side to go, hey, I'm actually able to do this other thing now. You can do this other thing and scale up in a different way. And whether it's retention or, maybe it's like following up with people better, whatever it might be. But we're for sure seeing the ability to like reduce labor costs if it is so desired.
Yeah, and I think that's a huge selling point, especially for a larger school. I mean, for a smaller school, I think the benefit is it generates growth quickly, right? But once you get to larger size, it's like start having other issues. Labor fixed costs continue to go up when revenue goes up, but that doesn't mean profitability goes up, right? And
Right.
so when you start looking at that, it's like, well, that's pretty cool. If you could, even if you had a staff of say 10 admin, right, between your different locations, and all this did was decrease that number by one, right? Well,
It's
now you're
huge.
talking a savings of two to 3 grand a month, right? And replace it with something like this. I think that is a pretty big selling point, honestly. I don't know if you've approached larger schools with that sales point, but I think that could be a really big benefit.
Totally. And you talk about saving time and stuff. One of the things that we've been developing for our school, so it's very customizable, right? I mean, we can the amount of things that we've seen, it's cool to now see clients like utilize this in a way to go like, I never thought about that before. But like
Right.
from our marketing standpoint, we're in the process of building out individual campaigns per month. And so right now, today everybody got added to our February marketing campaign. And all it does is it's going to fire all the way through all of our February marketing campaign. And then when we hit March, it's going to do the exact same thing. And our businesses are so cyclical that next year, when I do February marketing, there's going to be a Valentine's Day flash sale. We're going to launch our summer camps. And it's like all that same sort of stuff. And it's like you just have to go through, make a couple tweaks where historically what it's been is like spending, for me, 6 to 8 hours writing everything, getting an input, on how we actually want to do it. And now the system is just like, oh yeah, I get what you're doing. We're going to fire it all down consistently. So like, we talk about November, October, or October, November, December being quarter 4 big stuff, right? Our Black Friday stuff is done. Our Christmas stuff is done. January, New Year's, it's all in there. So there's it as an owner, right? So like my big job within our company is I sit more on the marketing side than I do on the operations. We have a operations person. And so for me, now all of a sudden it's freeing up my time from building out, writing emails and all that sort of stuff to now go, okay, well, what else can we do to be creative, from a marketing standpoint. So it's just like, I don't even think it's just even admin side that we're looking at, like saving labor costs. It's like, as a school owner, it has the potential, if you're the one who's handling all the email writing and marketing and all that sort of stuff, it has the potential to save you hours and hours every month, that you'd normally be sitting there writing campaigns and whatnot.
Right, right. I love it. I love it, Nick. Well, how do people get more info? And let's talk about cost. So, how much is this program?
Yep. So it is 197 a month, and we like just scratched the surface on a lot of the stuff it can do. So the big selling point that we initially started with was like, a lot of people are using like Mailchimp or Constant Contact, right? So it's got an email, it's got a Mailchimp or Constant Contact replacement. So we're able to like save the cost on that. Active campaign, essentially the way that we build out a lot of these automations is very similar to a company like Active Campaign, so we're saving that. We integrate all your Google, Facebook ads, Messenger, so like your Facebook Messenger, Instagram Messenger, all that sort of stuff. So we're able to bring all of that in for you. So what we've found is that a lot of times with school owners, they're like, oh, well, I was spending $100 a month on Mailchimp, and $100 a month on Active Campaign, and all these, and Calendly, and all these other solutions. And so what we've actually done is we've taken all these other big expenses, and we've gone like, oh, well, if we put them all in one spot, it saves us some time and money. So yeah, it's 197 a month, and the best way that we like to do it is, I personally like to demo it with people. And so if you visit mystudiosuccess.com, there's like a book a demo button that you can click, and you'll get to chat with me. And what we'll do is we'll sit down and we'll go like, you'll tell me about your school. We'll talk about, what sort of solutions and stuff that you're currently utilizing. And if, we believe that what we have to offer you is a good fit and will save your school time and money.
Nick Tucker, I'm impressed, my friend.
Oh,
That's a pretty slick program. It's working for you. It's working for schools around the country. If you're listening or watching this and you're interested, you got the website right there. Schedule a demo with Nick. Nick, thanks for joining me, my friend. This has been great, informative, and congratulations on all your success.
Oh man, thanks for having me. This has been a blast.
All right, man.